We call on our paternal ancestors.
The African connection with yoga, and that we can actually break it down and demystify it.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep question even from the beginning to even ask that one, because we're really talking about the brain.
We practice a vegan lifestyle, but it was considered vegetarian.
Kemetic legacy is part of their legacy, part of their ancestry, and that, the first scholars, the first writers, artists, mathematicians, scientists.
The first 100 years of this third millennia is the century of a consciousness awakening to who we are.
Just wrap my mind around the reality of that statement as being very accurate.
We eat from the foods that the Creator has brought up through the earth, which is a vegetarian diet. And in this diet, and with this breath, we have the power to have physicals that are remarkable throughout our lives.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. My name is Omiale Jube, and it is my honor to open this portal of communication to bring forth this awesome production. We begin by pouring libation to soften the ground, to call forth the spiritual energies to join us on this day. We begin with calling in the one, the all, by any name you choose, divine source, the creator. We welcome all of the spiritual energies to join us today, all those that have our highest good in mind. We call on the Netaru, the Orisha, the archetypes. We call on the ascended masters from all the cultures all across the world. We call on the angels of 100% pure light across all time and space. And we call on our ancestors, those upon whose shoulders we stand. Please join me in calling out their names. We call out our maternal ancestors. Call their names. Our mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers. We call on our aunts and our sisters and our nieces and our friends. We call on our sheroes. Call them out. Call out their names so they can hear you and join us today. We call on our paternal ancestors. Call them out. Our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers. We call on our uncles and brothers and nephews and our heroes. We call out the names of all those known and unknown that come before us. For we are our ancestors and our ancestors are us. We call on the energies of the East. We call on the energies of the West. We call on the energies of the North and the South. We call on the energies from below. Mother Earth, asking her to bring up her energy from her crystal core to join us today. We call on the energy of the sun to shine down upon this production and stimulate our melanin as it continues to grow the essence of life. And we call on the energy from within. We ask for blessings for this production. We ask that this production travel far and wide, that it may fall on the masses, the hearts and minds of the masses, so that their ears may be open to hear, and their eyes may be sharpened to see the vision, and their minds open to new horizons, and their hearts warmed to take in the knowledge, embrace the truth. We give blessings to the producers of this production. We give blessings to all of the participants, the panelists, and to all those whose hands came together to bring this production to fruition. It is our time. As we come into this new time, this new age of Aquarius, this new cycle, we go back to the future, back to our ancient knowledge, back to our ancient knowledge. It is time. It's time for us all to rise. Mother Earth is rising, as she rises to her rightful place as a fifth dimensional planet. May we all rise with her. Rise from within. And with that, in the ancient tradition of Mother Africa, I would like to ask permission to officially begin the production. So to all the elders out there, may we have your permission to begin. And please join me in saying, Ashe, Ashe, Asheo. Sante Sana.
You rise again. You rise again. You rise up.
Chapter 2 in the documentary focuses on Kemetic history. Our history has been altered in a way that we don't have the correct narrative for ourselves. So it is imperative for us to take the responsibility of seeking out our scholars, reading their books, and learning our history so that we can better ourselves, teach our children, and live proper lives.
So our people have not had the opportunity to really connect with their ancestry the way they should. You know, we've been trained to believe everything about our history started with enslavement. Everything about us is terrible and bad, and, you know, we're the downtrodden victims of society. And that infiltrates our thought process, and unfortunately it hits our children the most. You know, they go to school, no one's telling them the greatness of their ancestors, no one's telling them their connection to the continent. And the more we do this, the less people want to associate themselves with the African continent. The more I hear children say, I'm not African, I don't want to be associated with that. You know, I don't want to have nappy hair or big lips or any of those things. And, you know, they've been trained to believe that. And then they grow into adults who still believe that and don't want to wear their hair the way it grows out of their heads, or they want to do the nose jobs, or they want to lighten their skin. And this is all the effects of being told that you didn't accomplish anything, that you were no more than a slave.
Sheikh Anta Diop has passed away, but during the 1960s, he was the great scholar who went to battle against the mainstream Egyptology scholarly community and demonstrated conclusively that the ancient Egyptian people were black people and that ancient Egypt was an African civilization. There was always this narrative among Western scholars that ancient Egypt was founded by white people or Europeans or Arabs or somebody who was non-African.
So history is certainly a weapon. It can be used to what? Kill. It can also be a weapon to what? Change. And for us as a people right now, for those who had their history kind of altered over the years, it's now up to us to tell our own story. Because if you think about trying to control a person, how can you control a person when that person knows who they are? So history then is rewritten and manipulated so that that person doesn't know who they are, therefore you can control them. Think about the whole experience of slavery or the enslavement process. I mean, it was a lot of work to put a chain and a rope and beat somebody down, and that's a lot of work to keep doing that. But once you get the mind, you don't need to do that anymore. And so rewriting history is one way of getting the mind occupied for control.
The spiritual fabric has eroded. It's not present. And because of that, you know, the level of consciousness that exists is very dark. It's very dark. And those who are in power, their game is to perpetuate this darkness. by any means necessary, because it is in their general interest, their best interest, to maintain the current storyline that many have called, his story. And it's their story, and they have completely eradicated all of what has come before to create this storyline. Even Napoleon made the statement, and this is a famous statement that was made by Napoleon to one of his generals, when he said that history is just a group of lies that have been agreed upon.
And even the first Constitution of the United States had that a slave was only 3/5 of a person. So this was consistent with our thinking that black people were non-human. They were 3/5 of their perception of what was human, the measure being the white male, if you will. And yet the genome has flipped our whole superficial knowledge of life around and shows us that humanity is rooted in Africa.
And so Sheikh Anta Diop, he showed using DNA, language, archaeological evidence, anthropological evidence, the hair samples from ancient Egypt. He showed that this culture was not only was it black, but it was African, and that the people of ancient Egypt moved from the southern part of Africa and traveled up the Nile River, which is properly called the Hapi, and settled into the land which is now called Egypt, that we call Kemet, and founded that civilization that created the pyramids and created science and technology and philosophy and religion.
I was born Iyabo, Kia, Ranika, Atan, Hotep, Lawrence. So, of course, most people's like, what is that? I got teased a lot for being different. But my father would always make sure that we knew who we were. And we never could be ashamed for being African, We stood in our power, we stood in our truth. He always elevated us by teaching us about spirituality, teaching us about the breath, teaching us different poses and postures that will help us just live, just to be happy, just to be free. And that stuck with us, all of us.
We did have an understanding that things like philosophy, that is normally attributed to the Greeks, actually had its origin in Kemet. We had an understanding that mathematics, which is normally attributed to the Greeks and other people, had their origins in Kemet. We had an understanding that everything that we call civilization, from agriculture to science and technology, astronomy, astrology, all of these sciences had their origins in ancient Africa.
And inspired, spiritually driven people, which is one of the things that when you get away from these types of sciences, that, that element, that aspect of your being begins to suffer, begins to atrophy. And in that spiritual atrophy, you begin to lose a holistic sense of self that makes you more functional and holistic in terms of, how you deal with your everyday endeavors. And it makes you more susceptible, to being manipulated, by those individuals that don't have your best interests at heart, as well as culture, that doesn't have your best interests at heart.
When you relearn history and you realize that you came from a resource-rich, history-rich birth of civilization known as the continent of Africa, it changes your lens. But most people don't want you to know that. We are still fighting for people to recognize that Kemet was a black nation, that Kemet is physically located in Africa.
Black people are saying, we need to change this. And we also need to conform to what works for us, because these systems that we're adapted to don't really work for us. So I think more specifically, during the 2020 era, we had a big shift in people wanting to come closer into their power, wanting to know more about who they are, who their ancestors are, where they come from, how they show up in the world, and why things are the way that they are.
We have had in the past, through our ancient traditions, the principles of Ma'at, M-A-A-T, dealing with truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, which means you're now focused on something to do the right thing. Okay, there's a guide right there. You know, people say with Christianity, you got the 10 Commandments. So that's only 10 of the, 42? So we had some much more detailed ways of looking at the world and living righteously in the past. So most of the time when you talk to people, it's on a negative pole, something that's negative and something bad. It really takes effort to talk about the good. So we should be eliminating the negatives, accentuating the positives. It seems like, though, that's the hardest thing to do. And so in that context of us being people in general and the negativity that just pervades the planet, somebody thrives off of that. And the people who thrive off the negativity are the people who may be trying to control you. So it becomes very important for us to try not to be disconnected from going backwards in terms of doing the wrong thing, but to be focused on always thinking about principles of Ma'at. Well, how many people we talk about that? We got something called Kwanzaa. We got 7 principles of Kwanzaa. How many people follow that? So we have foundations, but you have to follow it.
If our children really knew what they were capable of, and the fact that this Kemetic legacy is part of their legacy, part of their ancestry, and that, you know, the first scholars, the first writers, artists, mathematicians, scientists, musicians, engineers, architects, they all came out of Kemet. They all came out of Africa. Africa was flourishing in many different ways. And all of what we know today, we got from there. But society doesn't want to acknowledge that. The mainstream never wants you to know that, because once you know your power and what you're capable of, they can't control you any longer. So when we look at how they've manipulated history, and, you know, even they won't say Kemet, they'll say Egypt. That was the Greeks that took that name. That's not the actual name, but if they use Kemet, it's too close to the African language. It's too close to what it was. They even say, well, the word Kemet itself only represented the soil, the fertility of the soil, the black nature of the soil, had nothing to do with the people. So don't say that Kemet is about the black land or the black people, it's about the black soil. And as I mentioned earlier with language, the Kemites would have said it meant both. You know, they weren't a linear people. There are multiple meanings for everything. So they would have said, yes, we named it because of the beautiful, fertile, rich soil that allowed us to have life. But we also named it after the people who were dark, because they were closest to the sun, because they had a connection with Ra, the divine force of all energy. Europeans don't want you to make that connection. They don't want you to know that this is African history. I mean, we're in the middle of Black History Month, and they don't even know what that means. Like, I look at TV and I see what they are talking about, and they reference Black history. They're talking about the few things we're doing now. That's not history. They don't know what our history is, so they can't teach it. They can't share it. It's really up to us to go back and do the reading and to learn it and to fight to reclaim our legacy and to make sure that people respect it, acknowledge it, and use it to empower ourselves again.
My motivation is just to really inspire, to bring light, you know, to bring awareness. And that's my motivation. You know, I really want to see those around me uplifted and moved into a place of consciousness that is of a perpetually spiritually enforced design of being in it, but not of it.
Variation is broadest in African people. We must be involved in this science. I claim the science for self-discovery, and self-discovery for being able to be all that we are created to be. And when we move into that way of thinking, all that we have been, certainly in terms of the history books, it pales in comparison to all that we can become. And that's the future that I would like our students and our generation to that the genome is saying, you haven't seen anything yet. You getting all excited about your ancestry. Hey, this genome is about your destiny. It's all that's already preloaded. You made in my image. You are naturally supernatural.
My motivation is to know more today than I knew yesterday. I love education. I love, I've been going to school for so many years. There was a point where people would tease me and say, all you do is go to school. I have my bachelor's, my master's, my doctorate, and now I'm getting a second master's, focusing on public health. And I love it so much because it's so much different than what I've learned before. So it gives me an opportunity to learn a completely different field. So the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to share the information that I have with others, that motivates me. The opportunity to help people feel good about themselves and to know that we didn't come from a downtrodden, slave race. That's not who we are. That we are so much more, that we are so much greater. Every day I learn something new, and I'm grateful for what I learned. So my motivation is education and teaching and learning and producing the best form of myself.
My motivation is to, one, stay alive, and two, get my freedom. And my freedom to me means being able to do what makes me happy. Kemetic yoga makes me happy, not just practicing it for myself, but teaching it to other people. I'm motivated because it feels good, and it's my liberation and helping people to know that they too can be themselves is a part of what we do. So I guess that's a part of my motivation too, to let people know that they can be who they are without conforming to any specific something.
So my motivation is seeing our community restore. That's my motivation. Seeing not just our athletes, but our elders. That's the mission I am on. That is the full level of the research. To restore our elders, to bring our youth forward where they bring the power in, where they live within the power, where they walk with their ankhs, my sister. Walk with their keys of life. Know what that key really means, that it opens the two doors to life.
To have influence on those who are, I guess, not just looking at me, not following me, but respecting me. So if I have a path to follow, a path to go on, I can then have people say, oh, no, that's the path I would like to go on. When you ask about maybe intellectual scholars, and it's like, well, who did you follow? Who did you? It's a kind of a difficult question. But when I look at people's work, like I like Frantz Fanon's work as a black psychiatrist coming from France. I didn't come from France. I'm not a psychiatrist. But his work, Black Skin, White Mask, Toward the African Revolution, Dying Colonialism, his last book, Wretched to the Earth. Man, what he did to change the world, that's a path. So for me, when you say motivation, hey, I study and learn like we all should, because we don't want to stop learning. Now, how can I now find that path where I can continue to learn and impact others around me?
Yeah, my motivation is that I want to see Kemetic yoga become something that is very accessible to people, that whether they use the term Kemetic yoga or not, that people who practice yoga really start to understand what yoga really is, that it is not just flexibility or physical movements and posture that you do for fitness, that it is a spiritual practice. It is a practice for your whole inner self-development. And so my goal is to allow Kemetic yoga to become recognized around the world. So that's what I do.
Seek and you shall find the answer, the meaning, your purpose. Know that healing is intentional and starts from within. Healing yourself is a process. Intentionally allow yourself to be healed from within. Ground yourself. Feel the earth beneath you. Exhale and release. Ground yourself. Become one with the almighty power. Align your mind, body, and spirit. Become free. Liberate your being. Breathe in balance, peace, and harmony. Allow yourself the opportunity to live and experience life in all of its fruits from the tree of